Have you ever taken a personality test and thought, oh, this is me, only to catch yourself acting in ways that totally contradict your results? Or wondered why your test results don't always match how you show up at work, at home, or with friends? Let's dig into why personality tests, despite their popularity, often fail to predict actual behavior. If you've ever taken the same personality test twice and gotten different results, please drop it in the comments below. I took it on Monday, I was an extrovert. Took it again on Friday, now I'm an introvert. At this rate, by Sunday, I'll be a toaster. Hey everyone, I'm Henry, and you're watching day 53 of my channel, Henry's Millions, where I dive deep into psychology, spirituality, and the mind, helping you unlock your personal potential and understand the forces that shape your life. This corporate obsession with personality tests. If you've worked at a large corporation, you've probably been handed a personality test like the MBTI, the DISC, the Strengths Finder, or the Big Five. These tests have been used for hiring, for team building, and leadership development since the 1950s and 60s. But here's the reality. The science behind these tests is shaky for most workplace applications. Their predictive power is far more modest than many believe. I love how companies use personality tests to decide if you're a good fit. Meanwhile, the only real test at work is, can you survive Karen from accounting's emails without crying? There's no test for that. So what are personality traits that these tests are testing for? So trait theory emerged in the 1940s, proposing that stable characteristics, these are traits, define your personality. The Big Five model, which took shape in the 1960s, organizes personality into 5 major dimensions: extroversion, conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, which is emotional stability, and openness to experience. These traits are measured globally, but their expression and importance can differ by culture and context. So scientific evidence. What does the research say? Decades of research, including meta-analysis and large-scale studies, show that the correlation between personality test scores and actual behavior is modest at best. Typically, you like how I slowed that down. I really want you to, I want that to sink in. Modest at best. Typically, these correlations fall below 0.40, and in many cases, they're as low as 0.2 to 0.3. In practical terms, what the heck does this mean, Henry? In practical terms, this means personality traits explain less than 16% of the variance in real-world behavior. The vast majority is shaped by other factors, such as context, situational variables, and social dynamics. So when I mentioned a coefficient a minute ago, or a correlation of 0.3, I'm talking about a statistical measure that shows how strongly two things are connected. So in this case, how well a personality test score predicts real-life behavior. A correlation can range from -1 to 1, and a value of 1 means a perfect match, 0 means no relationship, and -1 means a perfect opposite. So a coefficient of 0.3 means there's only a weak link. Knowing someone's test score gives you a little clue about what they'll actually do, but most of the story is shaped by other things, like the situation they're in or their habits. So in short, a correlation of 0.3 means personality tests are only modestly useful for predicting how people will act. Even conscientiousness, which is often highlighted as a trait most closely linked to workplace success, only predicts outcomes modestly. We're using this word a lot. Get used to linking it with personality tests. So while it tends to be the strongest personality predictor, the conscientiousness, of job performance, its effect size remains moderate, and it does not provide a crystal clear forecast of individual behavior or achievement. So these findings have been confirmed across different domains, whether predicting job performance, risky behaviors, or everyday actions. The so-called personality coefficient was first highlighted by Walter Mischel in 1968. It established the upper limit for these correlations around 0.3, a value that has become a benchmark in personality psychology for understanding the modest predictive power of trait measures. These tests are like horoscopes for people that think they're too smart for horoscopes. You're unique, but you're also like everybody else. Amazing. Next, they'll tell me my lucky numbers and which days to avoid Mercury retrograde. Let's talk about something, the Barnum effect here. I wanted to introduce this to you. You've never heard it. The Barnum effect. Why generic feedback feels personal. The Barnum effect is also known as the Forer effect. It's a cognitive bias where people accept vague, general statements as uniquely true about themselves. I have a number of videos on cognitive biases, guys. You want to go back, or ladies, you want to go back and check them out. So the Barnum effect, a cognitive bias where people accept vague, general statements as uniquely true about themselves. That's why personality test feedback often feels, spot on, even when it could apply to almost anyone. We naturally want to believe positive or relatable things about ourselves. When presented with broad statements like, you sometimes doubt your decisions, but you're capable of great focus when needed, we fill in the blanks and personalize the message. Now, psychologist Bertram Forer demonstrated this in 1948 by giving students identical personality descriptions and asking them to rate the accuracy. Most rated the statements as highly accurate. These are studies. The Barnum effect explains why both horoscopes and personality tests can feel meaningful, even when their predictive value is low. It highlights our tendency to seek validation and confirmation, making us more susceptible to believing in the accuracy of generalized feedback. I'm still in disbelief that companies are using these today. Limitations and biases of self-report tests. So most personality assessments rely on self-report, which introduces several key limitations. The responses reflect how we see ourselves, not necessarily how we act. Remember, I did a video on this recently in the last week about the differences between how we see ourselves and how the world sees us or other people, and that can be more accurate. So people may present an idealized or aspirational version of themselves, especially in high-stakes contexts like hiring. There's a strong incentive to answer in ways that seem favorable or acceptable, not always truthfully. So this is known as social desirability bias. Test outcomes can be heavily influenced by cultural background, leading to misinterpretations, unless the context is considered. So traits that seem important in one context may not matter in another. Like, for instance, assertiveness might be valued in sales, but not in research. And tests also reduce complex, dynamic human behavior into fixed categories, missing the nuance of real life. The truth is, human personality, it's not static. It evolves in response to life experiences, to environments, and even organizational culture. And people can intentionally game the system by answering in ways they think will help them succeed, especially if they know what employers are looking for. Like, you ever fill out a test and think, should I answer honestly, or should I answer like the person wants me to be? Because according to my last test, I'm basically Gandhi. But in real life, I get mad if someone cuts in front of me at Starbucks. All right, workplace consequences. So over-reliance on personality tests in the workplace can have significant downsides. Everyone, if you know someone in HR, director, VP, or head, or whatever, maybe share this video with them if they haven't rolled out the personality test yet. So the consequences, workplace consequences. Over-reliance on personality tests in the workplace can have significant downsides. Organizations spend millions on tests and training that may have little impact on actual outcomes, despite what the sales teams have said and shown you. Assigning someone a type can lead to pigeonholing, bias, and missed opportunities, especially for women, minorities, and those from different cultural backgrounds. And then overemphasis on test results can limit diversity, hinder collaboration, and stifle innovation. This is just loaded right here. It's exactly the opposite of what you were seeing in these sales brochures. So there are also legal and ethical risks. The misuse of personality assessments can lead to discrimination lawsuits or exclusionary practices. One thing that hasn't come up yet is all these emotional intelligence training and tests, and how some people say that they are kind of singling out men. That's a different story. So apparently these tests predict your future performance at work. Yeah, right. That's like saying my Netflix recommendations predict my career path. If that's true, I should be a Gladiator or the Equalizer by now. So we're talking about situations here, how people act in situations versus these personality tests scores. One of the main reasons personality tests fall short is the overwhelming power of situations. Social situations often have a stronger influence on behavior than personality traits alone. Even if someone is naturally introverted, they might act outgoing at a party if the context calls for it. In strong situations, such as church service, everyone tends to behave similarly, regardless of their personality. In weak situations like a party, individual differences are more likely to emerge. Remember our recent videos on the two selves, two stories? Our personality lives in two places. The adaptive unconscious is made up of automatic, habitual, and non-conscious patterns that guide much of our behavior. Ooh, don't miss those videos. They are just recent ones. Look back for these videos about your adaptive unconscious. The conscious self consists of the stories and beliefs we construct about who we are. These two selves, the adaptive unconscious and your conscious self, the one I'm interacting with right now, they operate independently. Remember that. The adaptive unconscious drives our uncontrolled implicit responses, while the conscious self influences our deliberate explicit actions. So most personality tests measure the conscious self, but much of our real behavior comes from the adaptive unconscious, which is out of reach of self-report questionnaires. Remember in the last video, we discussed how 11 million pieces of data or stimuli are coming in to us per second, I think, and 10 million of those come in through the eyes, 11 million total. Only 40 pieces of data are taken and used by our conscious selves. It's ridiculous. Most of this is unconscious, and these personality tests are just testing our conscious selves. All right, so behavior predictions and the evidence. The evidence for predicting behavior is sobering. Studies show, like we talked about, that the correlation between personality test scores and actual behavior is often below 0.4. You guys are geniuses now in coefficients, and sometimes much lower. Peer reports how others see us sometimes predict our behavior better than our own self-assessments. because others observe our actions rather than our stories about ourselves. The adaptive unconscious is shaped by genetics and early experience, and it's not directly accessible. You should know that by now if you've been following me on the previous videos. We must infer its workings from our behavior, not introspection, not test results. So Walter Mischel, social learning theory, he further emphasizes that behavior results from the interaction between personal cognitive variables and the situation. Even stable traits like honesty or assertiveness show weak correlations across different situations. Get this, less than 10% of behavioral variability is explained by the trait alone. Let me repeat this for you. Less than 10% of behavioral variability is explained by the personality trait alone. Somewhere today, someone is filling out a personality test. Oh, mind-boggling. Instead of labeling someone as aggressive, it is more meaningful to specify the situations where aggressive behavior can occur. It seems like common sense, right? This approach reveals the complexity and variability of human action, rather than relying on broad trait labels. So the real world, the world we live in, the implications. Personality tests, we know they're used often in hiring, but their ability to predict job success is limited, and our favorite word of today, modest at best. Context, skills, and situational factors, they matter more than test results. Relying solely on personality test results can give a false sense of certainty about who we are and what we're capable of. Overemphasis on these test results can stifle creativity, collaboration, and lead to mislabeling, stereotyping. My test says yes, you're adaptable and open to new experiences. The translation is you can't make up your mind and you're easily distracted. Thank you, I could have just asked my mother. So let's be honest here. Personality tests are the corporate equivalent of a tarot card reading. You've seen them, right? They're all over YouTube. Shuffle it, hope for insight, and get an answer that's just vague enough to sound profound. After all the time and money and mandatory team building sessions, what do we really get? A fancy label, a color-coded chart, and the privilege of being told we're introverted but open to new experiences. Oh, so groundbreaking. And companies all over the world are pouring millions into these tests every year. Imagine if that money went to something radical, like employee well-being, mental health resources, or even raises. God forbid, pay raises, promotions, paying people what they're worth. Instead of finding out if you're a blue square or a type C collaborator, how about finding out if your dental insurance actually covers anything? If personality tests really worked, every office would be a utopia by now. Instead, we're arguing over who microwaved broccoli in the break room. Congratulations. According to your results, you're a visionary leader, which means you get to lead the next team in filling out the year's personality survey. If I wanted to be put in a box, I'd just go to IKEA and buy one myself. At least then I'd get an Allen wrench. So these personality tests promise to unlock your potential, but mostly they unlock your company's budget for consultants and color printers. And the real secret to a better workplace? Spend less on tests and more on people. More on people. I varied that, right? I wanted to underscore that. Spend less on tests, more on people. Invest in well-being, invest in fair pay, and a culture where employees are seen as humans, not just a set of checkboxes or animal mascots. So next time someone tries to sell you on the latest personality assessment, ask if you can swap it for a nap, a coffee break, or literally anything that makes your work life better. Now, these are results we can all agree on. Every time.